1 minute gone past the hour of 9 o'clock in the morning time. It is the sound of Classic 105.5 and 105.9 on the FM band, coupled with our sister station television, that is. That is GBN Television, Channel 7, Channel 11, and Channel 20 if you're on cable. Good morning to you. Well, depending on which part of the globe you are, good afternoon, good night. Welcome to another edition of To The Point. For today, the first day of November. It's another really great day, and we're happy that we were here, and we're happy that you tuned in with us. To flog or not to flog? Archaic? Is it still relevant in our current construct in the 21st century? Should it be removed from the books, or should it remain on the books in time of need? Does it serve as a means of deterrent, or is it just totally nonsensical and serves no purpose? That's the conversation that we're about to engage in with local luminary, legal luminary, that is, and attorney, the man Edwin. Jerry Edwin. I'm losing them, probably haven't had enough sleep. Good morning, Jerry. How are you? Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Mr. Joseph. How are you, sir? Good morning to your audience.
Good morning and welcome to the program. Thank you for being here. To flog or not to flog? It is the question. What say you?
Well, I tell you, if you ask most Grenadian citizens, they are probably unaware that on our law books, we have retained this slavery era practice of asking a man to pull down his pants, bend over. They probably put his penis in a slot at the prison so that he could urinate. Because you see, when you experience certain pain, it is an involuntary reaction of your body that you would urinate. So that is likely part of the protocol. Pull down your pants, bend over, and someone takes a whip, a cane, and gives you 3, 4, 6, 8 strokes. If you are in Saudi Arabia, you can get as much as 1,200 strokes. If you are in Singapore, Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia, Albania, you can get up to 800 strokes. Grenada is the only country in the Caribbean where we have decided to retain this slavery era practice of flogging a person. In 2016, I brought a constitutional motion that is slowly making its way through the courts, because I think most people would agree, in the 21st century, we are still continuing to flog, to beat. And that is something I think is, I want to be respectful this morning, but that's really messed up.
If I were to ask you, Mr. Edwin, what is wrong really and truly with flogging?
Let me respond this way. If a parent has a child and that child misbehaves, we know that, the parent might paddle that child. It's a normal reaction. No problem with that. Of course, when the parent decides to brutalize that child, so much so they can't go to school, they cannot sit down, you probably will see the Child Protection Authority becoming involved, because then we're in the a realm of abuse. The problem with flogging is that there are particular kinds of offenses for which we do not flog. I mean, just to be even talking about this on November 1st, 2021 is a little jarring for my senses, but I want to respond because I think people need to be aware of how oppositional, how disgraceful, how despicable this practice is. By the way, Zimbabwe has banned flogging. China has banned flogging. Yes? It's only in certain despotic, barbaric practice, this barbaric practice continues. What is wrong with asking a man to pull his pants down? Well, let us examine it. When a person who is an accountant works for your business, you repose trust and confidence. You are, let us say, the accountant for GBN, or for Digicel, or for Huggins. You are the accountant. You are the cashier. And you steal money from the company. Flogging is not for you. It's not on the books. You cannot be flogged for that offense. If you commit money laundering, any of these so-called high crimes, flogging is not for you. It's not in the books. The question really is, who are flogged? Who is the law intended to punish? Ill-conceived as the law is, what does it say about the persons who should be punished in this barbaric fashion? Mr. Cadore, it should come as no surprise to us. It is the poor. It is the poor.
Is that a stipulation in law, or is that your legal interpretation?
Yes, sir. Let me explain.
Okay.
You are not flogged for stealing money as an accountant. Flogging on the books is for predial larceny with a threat and for robbery with violence. How do the poor commit their crimes? I mean, I have a little bit of experience with this, and the ordinary person would have some experience as well. The poor man comes and raids the field of the farmer. He is wrong. He is wrong. Punish him. For predial larceny, section 16 of the Act says if you threaten the man, the farmer, when you commit predial larceny, rich people don't commit predial larceny. Persons with money in their pocket do not commit predial larceny. That's a poor man's crime. Who else will go and take a person's coconuts? Or they will cut up their sorrels or their lettuce? And then when they come, they threaten them and say, hey, if you come any closer, and then they take the basket of vegetables and they run. That's a poor man's crime. That, on the books, is who flogging is intended for.
But why do you say that, though? But doesn't it seem almost discriminatory the way you put it, that you're determining what crime is associated with certain social standing? What makes a crime a poor man's crime?
Mr. Cadore, that is the irony in the way in which the law is written. You are only flogged for two kinds of offenses: predial larceny and robbery with violence. Any threat of violence. So money laundering, it's off the books. There's no flogging for money laundering. A theft by fraud, you are not flogged. It is only for those two offenses. And who commits those offenses? The accountant at Hubbard's? No. Who commits predial larceny? The poor man. No. I think it's a failure of our imagination. When we know how to punish people, and we have sentencing guidelines in our courts, there are precedents for sentencing. We know how to punish people. As I said, we suspend sentences, we send them to jail, we give them community service. But the law says, and it's a slavery era law, you take the master's fruit, you go in the field and you dig up his potatoes, you cut his sugar cane. That's the field slave. That's not the house slave, that's the field slave. And so that practice has continued for the last 268 years. And in Grenada in 1974, we kept it on our books. So when I brought the constitutional motion, when I heard about this, I said, no, this is something out of a fantasy in my mind. And I said, no, we don't do this. We're an independent nation. Turns out I was wrong.
The argument that you put forward, you talked about it being brutish. Are you challenging the flogging itself as a means of corporal punishment? Or are you challenging the way in which it's conducted?
Our Constitution is clear. Punishment cannot be degrading or inhuman. That is in quotes. No punishment can be degrading or inhuman. And I think Exhibit A of degrading and inhuman punishment is to bend a man over, expose his buttocks, and beat him with a cane.
So my argument then, you talking about the inhumanity of it. So then should it then be okay if I'm opting to flog you? Okay, keep your clothes on, stand at attention, and I flog you. Would that be humane?
Any act in which we beat, strike someone, and this is not me saying this. This is the Organization of American States saying this. This is every single country in CARICOM saying this. This is every country in the world, except about 7 or 8 countries, saying this. That this is not the way you punish persons. How about you chop off their hand? How about you punch them in the face? Yes? How about you have them eat certain kind of things, degrading and inhuman? We don't have to explain what degrading and inhuman is. You know it as a human being. You see it, it's like an obscene word. You don't. How can you describe an obscene word? You cannot. You hear it, you know it's obscene. Mm-hmm. Do an act that punishes somebody in a way. There are men, for example, Mr. Joseph, whose testicles have been busted up because the whip has struck them in such a manner they cannot have children anymore. They cannot sit. This is something that Grenada, we're a country.
So how about if I put forward the argument, what if I buy into your position that maybe flogging remained on the books for the poor man, because you are certain that in certain crimes the rich folks, quote unquote, would not do. Right. So as you said, if it's done by the accountant, it's called, you sure it as a white collar, it's called money laundering. If a poor man does it, it is called stealing. How about, therefore, can it then be determined that we adjust the laws instead of removing it from the books? That maybe, because there are some crimes in society that is just heinous as it is. Child molesters and the such like. Should we then keep it on the books for them instead?
No, Mr. Cadore. Nobody should be flogged. We human beings have advanced to the point that we are creative in the way that we punish people without degrading them, without making them feel inhuman. We know how to punish. There should be no crime in the world. And again, I am not the Organization of American States, of which Grenada is a member, has outlawed this. The last country to have flogging was the Bahamas in 1984. They banned corporal punishment. Last year, Zimbabwe, a country that is the poster child, you might say, for undemocratic government. They removed it from their books. Why does Grenada, what makes us so brutal to our own people. We are saying, as a single country in CARICOM, that we are going to treat our citizens different. Why us?
Why do you think change is so slow in coming?
Good question. That is the question. And I'll tell you this. First and foremost, there has never been a challenge to the practice before we brought this constitutional motion in 2016. No one has ever challenged it. Why? I don't know. I mean, I don't look around and wonder who did what. If I see something that is wrong, I mean, my inclination is to go shut it down, right? I remember when there was an attempt by the Ministry of Tourism a few years ago, Mr. Cadore, to have a celebration, they said, of slavery to attract tourists to Grenada. I didn't ask, why are we doing this? I knew, and you know, and all of us in Grenada know, that idea stinks. And we went and we shut it down, and they arrested me and all that, but some things you just have to go and stand up against. You don't need consensus. But to ban flogging, here is the thing. Remove flogging as a punishment in Grenada. The government, this is how simple it is to remove this barbarism from our law books. The government of Grenada just has to pick up its pen and sign maybe 3 lines, maybe 4, or maybe just put a line through the words, and it's over, done. Because the parliament in Grenada, the current parliament, has a majority. All you need, this is not a punishment, say like a referendum to change our constitution. You don't need a supermajority. You don't have to go to the public for a vote. All the parliament has to do is to just strike it off our books. Because we know how
so,
21st.
So is this our leader's way of delegating, of reducing us, the populace, as second-class citizens, where we live in an elite society where there are those at the upper echelon, and keeping it on the books helps to maintain that guard? I am up here, you down there.
Mr. Joseph, not only did you see the nail and the hammer, you've actually struck it dead on. That is my argument. This is a crime, a punishment that segregates people by class. That is exactly what it is. Because if that were not the case, we would see flogging on the books for persons who commit fraud by virtue of employment. And by the way, unfortunately, that is a horrible crime in Grenada. We would see flogging for persons who violate women. We would see flogging for other kinds of crime, but we do not see it for that. Flogging is only for those kind of crimes that are committed by the poor. And we know how to punish them. Send them to jail. Give them a term of imprisonment.
But why should we in this difficult economic times, Jerry, put pressure on a already crippled economy to send a man to jail to live off of taxpayers' money? Why don't I just flog him, send him home, end the conversation, and we move on, and he learns?
Why don't we cut off his fingers?
Maybe we should. Why shouldn't we?
Then I don't want to be in this country. I'll be the first person up there to maybe tell those persons who want to do that kind of thing that they will get retribution, because we are not barbaric. That is not who we are.
We are not.
No, we are not barbaric. We are not in the days of slavery. That is where flogging comes from. Grenadians did not institute flogging. Flogging came straight out of the slave master's playbook, and we have not written it off our books.
And many would argue before we take the break that the issue is not just relegated to flogging, but a lot of the other archaic laws. And I know there's a particular gentleman that continues to argue as to whether or not the laws that governs us, whether or not it was ever ratified, and whether it really makes sense, and whether or not we're truly independent. That's part of the conversation. We take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we continue with the conversation. I want to say good morning to those of you, Union Alexander, Marilyn, Jeffrey, and others, Kipling Francis, that's logged in via our YouTube channel. We continue. I'll be attending to your comments in a while. Take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back, right here on To The Point. GBN Television News at 7, a pulse on all things Grenadian. Look out for our new features through expanded synergies with our media partners in Barbados, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Trinidad, and beyond. Capturing the latest in news, sports, weather, and entertainment. Credible, informative. Thank you for making us number one. News at 7, live, Monday to Friday on GBN Television, Channel 7 and 11. K105.5 and 105.9, Hot 98.5 and 98.7, GBN Television Facebook page and YouTube channel, and www.gbn.gd. GBN, with you anywhere and everywhere. Welcome back to The Point. My guest this morning, local attorney Jerry Edwin. So, Jerry, you were arguing that flogging, it is archaic, it is slavish, it's relegated to slavery, it is brutish, should be removed from the books. You're saying that it is a way of literally continuing an act of segregation. That the world, and Grenada is one of the few countries where the act is still coming. What do you see as an alternative replacement to flogging? But even before we get to that, does flogging work as a form of corporal punishment? Does it work in your mind?
We got to ask the slave master, did flogging stop persons from rebelling against the conditions of the labor camps, the forced labor camps that they call plantations? No, we still rebelled, and you and I and our grandparents are testimony to that. You do not whip someone into compliance. Are there other ways to punish? Well, we know there are. We fine people. We say, well, you've committed an offense. Here is the amount of money that you have to pay. I had a young man who took a nude picture of his girlfriend and sent it around to her friends. We didn't flog him. What we did was we gave him a fine. We have persons who commit acts of violence against other persons. We don't flog them. We send them to Richmond Hill, and then they pay the medical bills for the person who was injured. Yes? So there are ways, and we can do it in combination. We've been doing it for decades. But there is something about the reluctance of our government, and I'm not being partisan now, because the NDC government kept it on the books. The NNP has it on the books. They refuse, and these are parliaments that claim to care about especially the poor people. Mm-hmm. They refuse, these parliaments, to simply pick up their pen and put a line to that section of the law that calls for flogging. As I said, Grenada is unique. Sadly, we have the sad distinction of the only country in CARICOM that says to our citizens, certain classes of our citizens, If you steal a coconut, not if you steal the money. If you steal a coconut, we're going to beat you like the slave master used to beat you.
Well, maybe that might be an interpretation, but maybe it's a way of highlighting to individuals the importance of the agricultural sector. And I'm wondering, because you've intimated that on the books locally, pre larceny, did you say, is one of the acts of the crimes?
Let me stop you.
But no, let me ask.
Isn't tourism the most important pillar in our economy?
Well, that's an argument. That's an argument I'm not sure if you and I are going to get into. What I do know is that the act of larceny, it has become a scourge in our society. So obviously, if flogging is intended to deter it, maybe it's because, but are we applying it? When was the last time someone was flogged, was actually flogged?
Well, actually, since I brought this constitutional motion, because it's an offense, the punishment is actually meted out in the magistrate's court.
Right.
So since I brought this motion, there has been a voluntary stay on flogging in the magistrate's court. By the way, the magistrates agree that this is an inhuman practice. It's on the books. The Attorney General, who, as a servant of the Parliament, opposes this practice, opposes my motion. You ask any individual lawyer who works on behalf of the government, and they will tell you, we don't like this, but it's on the books. Did you know abortion is on our books as a crime? Abortion is on our books as a crime. Beating a drum within, I think, 100 yards of the courthouse is on our books. The reason why I want to highlight those two offenses along with flogging is because the slave master did not want women to abort children. They need more workers, more slaves. The reason why they didn't want the drum to be beaten, to be close to the courthouses, because they were afraid of black science. They were afraid that we were communicating to each other. And not one single parliament. I mean, you don't expect the colonial parliament to do it, but you expect an independent country where people look like you and me, that we would say, we need to get these laws off our books. It can't be because I came and made this noise about it. So there's something more. I think it's a segregation of the classes.
The current construct that exists, flogging on the book, is this a failure of us, the people, or is it a reflection of the sort of leaders that we have that they themselves seem trapped in a period that's long gone? Is this a call for reform in terms of leadership? And when I say leadership, I'm meaning at all levels.
I want to be full-throated about this. And my answer is in the affirmative. Yes. Our leaders, whether it's in civil society, the religious community, or in the political directorate, they have failed to be in the forefront of social issues. You ask them, should we build another hotel? All of them are running to the front. Oh yes, we need another hotel. Yes, so what? So people who look like me, our children could be barmaids? Yes. They are all together on that. Ask them if they believe our people should be treated with dignity. With dignity. Especially the most economically vulnerable.
A question to you, Mr. Edwin, coming from social media. Do you agree that Grenada, do you see Grenada and agree that Grenada is a Christian country?
If I think Grenada is a Christian country?
Yeah, that we have a Christian nation.
I mean, I see Christians do things here in Grenada. I wonder what religion they belong to.
No, right. But I'm asking you, do you confirm that we're a Christian nation?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I see there are Christians, there are Muslims, there are all sorts of religions here. But are the majority of Grenadians Christians? But that question answers itself, of course.
We are.
Yes.
How do you interpret when the Bible talks about it use the application of not sparing the rod and spoiling the child?
No, that anybody who asks that question have their head in the sand. The good guy named Jesus Christ, he said to us, he said, when you go out and somebody wastes what they have, don't help them. He said, love your neighbor as yourself. But if you guys both of you have the same thing, the girls who went to the wedding, that's what I'm referring to. He says, and they come begging you for a little oil to light their lantern, you kick them to the curb. So we cannot take biblical stories in the absence.
But they are not just biblical. They are not just
protection society. We have a child protection authority.
But Jerry, they are not just biblical stories. They are there for moral guidance.
Says who?
The Bible. I'm not going to argue with the Bible. Do you? Unless you're saying that it doesn't make sense.
I am not here to argue with the Bible. And if you want to look at the Bible, you have to look at the entire Bible. As I said, the Bible says, treat your neighbor as yourself.
So what if I don't have? So what if I don't have a problem? Okay, then. So what if I don't have a problem with being flogged? The Bible says, treat my neighbors as I treat myself. What if I don't have a problem with being flogged?
I am not here to engage in a conversation about the Bible.
No, I understand that. But the point I'm making, Jerry, is this.
I'm here to argue as to the legality and the humanity of and other parts of a law that is outlawed in the overwhelming majority of civilized nations.
Yeah, but
if people want to have a discussion about the Bible and what it says,
right,
get someone else to argue.
No, but hold on. But here's my point. I only brought this up because in the context, if you truly want this to work, for there to be change, the masses must get involved. You have to tap into the average man on the street and feel his pulse, what he thinks. And it's in that that's why I'm asking you this.
I would put my head on a block. 99% of Grenadians want to see this law gone. I would put my head on a block.
You're willing to put your head on the block. 25 minutes onto the hour.
Oh, and let me also say, by the way, the law against flogging says you can only flog men. You cannot flog women.
And why do you think that is?
As I said.
Or is it could be that we respect our women?
Say again?
Is it that we respect our women, or is intended to do not encourage the practice of hitting women? I can always argue that.
No, it's again, we are our history. Where does flogging come from as a punishment? It did not come out of the Grenada Parliament in 1974. It came out of the colonial, pre-colonial, and slavery era practice that we, when we became independent in 1974, did not take off our books. We are our history. There is no country, a black country, not one in the world, that adopted the practice of flogging after it became an independent country. Let's be clear about that.
Right.
This is something that came out of the white European slave master that was intended to dominate us, to make us inhuman, and to be cruel, and to treat us as less than human. That's what this does. And imagine the economic impulses behind that law. Yes? That's why women are not flogged. That's why women are not flogged. So constitutionally, on the face of it, the law is a bad law. I am not calling for the flogging of women. I'm calling for the ending of flogging, period.
Ending of flogging, ending the whole total end to corporal punishment.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're keeping our eyes on the clock. 22 minutes onto the hour in the morning time. We have a caller live on the line. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Yes, good morning. I just want to ask Mr. Edwin. He made a statement that the slave masters did not want the slaves, to abort children. And I'm glad he mentioned the word children, because we think about abortion as if it's just something. It's not a child, as if it's not a human, and we kill them and we think it's okay. And he said to me, he's supporting abortion, that you can kill the unborn children and it is okay. But then he's still fighting against putting on a man's pants or somebody's pants and flog them. He's against that, but he's for murdering the unborn. Please let him explain that to me. Thank you.
Your response, sir?
Discussion about abortion, simply pointing out that law, the practice of abortion, is still a crime on our law books, as is beating a drum close to the courthouse. I was just pointing out that there are certain laws, archaic laws, that remain on our books.
Maybe the argument should be that if they all are archaic, why not then forward a motion that they all be removed?
Oh, I completely agree, sir. I agree that slavery-era laws have no right on the law books, particularly of an independent black country that has freed itself from European and slave domination and slavery. We don't need those laws on our books.
I have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. You're alive.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, I just want to kind of take a little diversion a little bit. I personally, my opinion, think that the subject this morning is very good. But I think there's a more burning subject that we need to talk about. And just, we have a lawyer on the set, and I just want to find out, if possible, how most of the lawyers in Guyana are so silent on the rights of the people, whether to vaccinate or not to vaccinate.
Well,
I mean, Brother Edwin is very vocal. We're not hearing him concerning that.
yes, sir, but you can well appreciate that we're here to have a conversation on a specific subject matter. If you wish to, unless he chooses to respond, but if you wish to ask the lawyer in his capacity as a lawyer on that specific issue, I'm not sure why unless he chooses to understand, but it's not a conversation, because that's just going to dilute the conversation this morning.
Okay.
While it's important, that would take us down another road.
I cannot understand, but that just was on my heart, so I said I need to.
Well, maybe what we can do, I can throw it out to Jerry. I know if it's something he's comfortable to speaking about, then maybe we can always have a session where we look at the legalities of those issues.
Yeah, because the only reason why, sir, is that I just find most, if not all, the lawyers are silent. So
Okay.
I don't know the reason for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Jerry, you wish to comment in any way, form, or fashion?
Maybe that's why I didn't hear the question. I didn't hear I heard nothing.
Oh, you heard nothing.
I don't know.
He was just.
I did not hear the question.
He was just.
Good reason.
Probably for good reason. He was just highlighting the fact that there seemed to be a definite silence in the legal community as it relates to the issue of mandatory vaccine. And he was wondering whether or not that's a conversation that can be had as to why there seems to be such that glaring silence. As I said, it's not a conversation I want to entertain now, but if you wish to comment on it, maybe not today at a different time, certainly we can. But
I'll just briefly say that workers have union leaders. Why don't union leaders speak up on behalf of workers? What's the obligation of lawyers?
maybe if they want to pay you to represent them, when the union fails, you would certainly oblige. Let's go back to the telephone lines. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Good morning.
Yes, go ahead.
To the learned attorney, I don't think that robbery with violence is limited to the poor man. We have seen in movies, and we've had stories of life stories from around the globe, where people who are not necessarily poor commit the crime of robbery with violence. And the next thing I want to say is that, how do you treat somebody? I'm not probably the way in which corporal punishment is being administered might be like a man having to take off his pants. But a couple years ago, a youngster raped and killed his grandmother. You know that your grandmother? We know how grandparents treat children. How a guy could rape and kill his grandmother? I mean, I find flogging has to be part of his punishment. Have a good day.
This person saying it should remain on the books.
Why don't we cut off the young man's testicles then?
Why don't we castrate?
Yeah, why don't we castrate him?
Why shouldn't we?
The reason why we don't do that is because we are human beings and there are certain kind of punishments. This belongs in another era. I mean, we have to begin to think as civilized. I mean, I don't want to think that Grenada is a country that is different from any other country in the Caribbean, Mr. Joseph.
But let me ask you.
We must have the same care and concern and dignity for human life.
And that I agree 100%. But someone make the argument that while we talk about humanity, when it comes to flogging, the inhumanity of flogging, there are those, of course, isn't it the same culture that exists where we have the division in society, where the rich looks down on the poor, where we see poor people, forget the flogging, but we see people, they are living on the fringes of society, and we accept it as just being just another person.
But Mr. Joseph, isn't that universal? I mean, isn't that what happens all over? I mean, don't we have rich and poor all over the world?
Well, no, I'm talking about here. We talking about Grenada.
Grenada is no different from anywhere else in the world. Let's be clear.
Yeah, but you're just making the comparison of there being the segregation, and so is it that's what happens worldwide? It's just that the way life is.
No, we have poor and rich people everywhere, but what we have on our law books is an intellectual laziness by our leaders who are afraid, our religious leaders, our social society leaders would not step up and say, come on, we have to treat people with dignity. We don't do that. Human beings don't do that. We're not in Iran. You want to be in Iran? Go in Iran. You want to be in Malaysia and Brunei? Go live in those countries. See how long you would last. Do we want to have the same social mores and practices in which we treat why don't we have, we talk about, I'm a Caribbean man, I'm a Caribbean woman, I'm a Caribbean citizen, I'm a member of the Organization of American States. Except when it comes to punishing poor people.
How about we just apply the law across the book? What happens, or would it be then justifiable if when someone takes away, he commits a crime, an inhumane crime against an individual, they rape, they molest, they take away an individual's dignity? Should those situations then warrant flogging? If it's inhumane, let the crime, the punishment befit the crime. What say you?
As I said, why stop at flogging? To take that to its logical conclusion, why stop at flogging? Let's cut off their fingers. Cut off their tongue.
We are choosing not to. We're dealing with flogging. Because cutting off of the tongue and cutting off of the fingers were never on our law books. So we're not going there.
Let me say this. It is not that it's on our law books. We are our history. Mm-hmm. We come out of a slave society. Because in slavery, when you learned to read, you were beaten and you were killed. In fact, that's why I've always argued that education should be our reparations as black people.
Right.
I don't want any money. I think that this crime like this, we were the only people in the world that were beaten for learning to read. So for crimes that were committed against the property of the slave master, there was this practice of beating that person. taking them out in the public square and humiliating that person. That's really what flogging is intended to do, you know, to humiliate you, to make sure that you're already a slave, but we're gonna make you even more degraded. Do we in the 21st century want to be on that road? Why? We know how to punish, Mr. Joseph.
Right.
We put people in jails. We fine people. We have community service, and all crimes are horrific. I'm not saying that certain criminals should be coddled. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we punish, but we know how to punish people. We have precedents, we have rules, we have laws against how to punish people. Why should we go into the playbook of the slave master? I think we're bigger than that.
We're keeping our eyes on the clock. We are much bigger than this. This calls for a change. There must be a change. There's change on the law books. How do we fix this going forward, Jerry?
Yes.
How do we fix this?
Right. It's very simple. In Belize, there was a law that criminalized homosexual acts. Yes? What they call buggery. And the way the Belizean court fixed it is that the chief judge took his pen and he crossed it off the book.
Right.
So that's how we fix it. In Grenada, where we have flogging, cross it off the books and do what we do with other kind of offenses. If you're a first-time offender, we'll consider a suspended sentence. If you are not, and depending on the extent of your conduct when you committed this horrible offense of taking all that farmer's product that they worked so hard to get it to market, we're going to give you 3 years in jail. And we're going to charge you a fine. Yes? We do it for all offenses. Why are we flogging? Why are we degrading our people? And I think our parliament, who say that they care for people, I believe them. Why would you treat people? Why would you treat your own citizens, the most vulnerable ones? Why would you choose to degrade them? You know how to punish. It's on our books. Why degrade people? Why treat people as though they're slaves? That's where this punishment comes from. We need to get it off our books, Mr. Joseph.
Has there ever been a time when corporal punishment worked?
You mean worked as in drawing blood from the buttocks of someone?
Work as in the context as being a deterrent from crime. Yes.
As deterring crime?
Has it ever worked?
I think the evidence speaks for itself. Of course not. Of course not. We have capital punishment, the ultimate, where we take someone's life. Has that ever stopped crime? Of course not. This punishment was meant to degrade our people. That's what it was intended to do, to make us, to put our dignity below the ground. It wasn't meant to deter crime. And so our governments, our parliaments, people who look like us, ought to step up and be real. You say you love our people, you think you want to treat us with dignity. Take this slavery era law off the books. Take it off now. You have the majority. There are 15 of you, no competition. Take your pen, cross it out. A term of imprisonment. That's what we do with pedophiles. That's what we do with rapists. We don't beat them. We put them in jail for a very, very long time. You commit manslaughter, we put you under the jail. We don't beat you. We need to take slavery era laws off our books, especially us, the children of former slaves. We have risen to dignified levels of humanity, and the law should reflect that. That is my position. So I'm calling on the parliament, cross this barbaric practice off the law books. And this is not partisan, as I said. The NDC has elected a new leader. less than 24 hours ago. What is their position on the dignity that they think our citizens deserve?
I have a caller live on the line. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, go ahead, please, sir.
Yeah, is it Mr. Jerry saying that he prefers to see
Joseph, I cannot hear, huh?
He prefers to see the cut off the hand or so? And I believe that there are certain crime that people commit that the flogging is good for them. Because there are some people that what they've done to other persons, they should really pay for it. Sending them to jail, they're not paying for it. What about if they go to jail and they still come out and do the same thing? We know a person that go to jail for crime and come out and do the very same thing. Some crime, you have to pay for it. I believe that. And is he saying that we should cut off the
I think I've got your question.
Yeah. Well, you know, did flogging ever stop radio larceny? Did sending people to jail ever stop crime? Did killing, hanging them, giving them the electric chair or the needle, putting poison into their veins legally, does that ever stop crime? It doesn't. It doesn't. Crime is part of the human character. Sadly, that's who we are. That's who we are. Unfortunately, we will live with crime until this is no more. But the state must punish people in a dignified way because they know how to do it. We should never adopt the slave master's playbook in telling us how we should punish people. The slave master has a different agenda. Our parliament can never have the same agenda as the slave master.
Is it possible that there was never really a change of the agenda remained? There was just maybe a masking of it. Is it possible?
Oh, I don't believe that one bit. I believe Dr. Mitchell, or Mr. Deacon Mitchell, or Mr. Tillman Thomas, or Maurice Bishop, or Herbert Blaze. I think these people, these are dignified men and women. I firmly believe that. I just think they're lazy. I just think they are lazy. And they have never been called out. They have never been called out. We have to call them out and say, treat Grenadian people with dignity. Don't treat Grenadian citizens unlike any other country in CARICOM. We have the same dignity as every other CARICOM citizen. Why are we less than our brothers and sisters in Jamaica, St. Vincent, Barbados, Belize, Trinidad and Tobago? Why?
What should the response of the populace be in attempting to bring about change?
Well, if you leave it up to me, I think all 100,000 of us should go to the parliament and sit in until they change the law. But that is not practical. I think the force of moral conviction, an appeal to the conscience of these persons we elect as our leaders, to call them out, to say your mother, father, your great-grandparents were treated with indignity and less than human. Why do you want to continue to treat their children of today the same way the slave master treated them 200, 300 years ago? I think that is a compelling argument.
The argument has been brought forward by Jerry Edwin. Certainly it's a conversation that started a long time ago and will continue. To remove or not to remove flogging from books, certainly it's an ongoing conversation and one that would continue to be there for quite some time to come. Jerry, thank you.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not.
Let's hope not. Let's open. I think what it really would take, though, as part of this conversation, is a continuous move to educate the populace, starting with at the lowest level. Because what I think no. Here's the point I'm making. Jerry. Hold on. You're not listening.
When they are treated with indignity.
No, you're not hearing the point I'm making.
Teach a child.
You're not hearing the point I'm making. I'm saying, in order to change our mental psyche, Because therewith, you were talking about society responding to change. There is one thing to change the laws on the books. That's all I'm saying. You can change the laws on the books, but the laws on the books would not necessarily change the way we see each other. It's a start.
No, Mr. Joseph. No.
You may not. You may not agree.
We're going to disagree on that.
Well, let us disagree.
No, people know when they are treated inhumanely and without dignity.
And
my child knows that.
We may disagree. My point I'm making is collectively that while we change what's on the books, outside of the issue of flogging, I'm not just limiting this to flogging. Just the way...
I agree with you.
It's in that context. That's what I'm saying. It's in that context. The way we treat each other. Remember, it goes back to do unto others as you like them to do unto you. That's what I'm saying.
I'm limiting this discussion to flogging. I'm not having a religious conversation.
I am taking it...
biblical philosophy.
No.
All I'm saying is take this barbaric practice of era punishment off the books of an independent black nation. That's all I'm saying.
I've got you. 3 minutes onto the hour.
Thank you. Let me thank you too, Mr. Joseph.
Anytime.
For allowing me to come to your air and to discuss this.
Anytime.
Very kindly.
All the best to you. Take care.
You, sir. A pleasant day to you and to your audience.
To flog or not to flog, that is the question. We leave the conversation here for now. I think what's needed is that we continue. We need to dig deep into ourselves and ask ourselves the question, is that the way I would like to be treated? If not, what can we do to change the status quo? We leave the conversation there for now. Indeed, it was a pleasure being here with you. I'm JC saying peace and love to you. I take my departure. The good Lord's willing, I'll be back with you tomorrow from 6 o'clock when we continue the journey right here in Classic and GBN Television. Have a great one, everybody.